Jordan wobbled down the sidewalk, knees bent at odd angles, hands gripping the handlebars so tight that knuckles turned white. Dark curls peeked out from beneath a bright yellow helmet, and brown eyes focused intensely on the path ahead. The new bicycle, shiny red with silver streamers, seemed determined to tip sideways with every push of the pedals. "Keep going! You're doing great!" Dad called from behind, his voice carrying that special parent tone that meant he was probably fibbing just a little. The front wheel jerked left, then right, then left again. The streamers whipped around like confused butterflies, and suddenly the world tilted. Grass rushed up to meet a scraped elbow, and the bicycle landed with its wheels spinning uselessly in the air. "Ow, ow, ow!" The words came out in little puffs while examining the damage. Just a small scrape, nothing serious, but it stung like 100 tiny bee stings. Dad jogged over, his weekend sneakers making soft thuds on the pavement. "That was actually much better than your last attempt. You made it almost to Mrs. Chen's mailbox this time." "I'm never going to learn." The words came out muffled against Dad's shoulder. "Everyone else in second grade already knows how. Even Maya, and she's the youngest in our class." "Hey now," Dad said, gently lifting the bicycle upright. "Remember when you couldn't tie your shoes? Or when you thought you'd never memorize your multiplication tables?" "That's different." "Is it?" Dad adjusted the helmet, making sure it sat properly. "Every skill feels impossible until suddenly it isn't. How about we take a break? I promised Mrs. Chen I'd help her move some boxes, and she mentioned she might need an extra helper." Mrs. Chen lived 3 houses down in the blue house with a garden that looked like a rainbow had exploded and decided to stay. She opened the door before they could knock, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and her apron covered in flower handprints. "Perfect timing," she said, clapping her hands together and sending up small clouds of flour. "I'm teaching my grandson how to make dumplings, but these old fingers aren't as nimble as they used to be. Could you help us?" The kitchen smelled like ginger and sesame oil. At the table sat a boy about the same age as Jordan, wearing a dinosaur shirt and a frustrated expression. Dumpling wrappers lay scattered across the table, and a bowl of filling waited in the center. "This is Marcus," Mrs. Chen said. "He's visiting for the weekend." Marcus looked up with eyes that seemed ready to cry. "I can't do it, Grandma. Look." He held up what might have been a dumpling if dumplings were supposed to look like lumpy rocks, with filling oozing out the sides. Mrs. Chen's face softened. "Learning takes time, dear one. Perhaps our new friend can help. Sometimes teaching someone else helps us learn better ourselves." Jordan sat down across from Marcus, studying the dumpling disaster. "I don't know how to make dumplings either." "Then we'll all learn together," Mrs. Chen said, pulling up a chair between them. "First, we take a wrapper. See how it's round like a little moon?" Her weathered hands moved slowly, deliberately, showing each step. "Now we add just a small spoonful of filling. Not too much, or our dumpling will burst like Marcus discovered." Marcus giggled despite his frustration. "Mine exploded. There was cabbage everywhere." "Mine would probably do the same thing," Jordan added, carefully copying Mrs. Chen's movements. "The first attempt looked more like a wonky taco than a dumpling." "Better than mine," Marcus said, holding up his latest creation. This one had stayed closed, but barely. They worked side by side, fingers sticky with dough, sharing stories of other kitchen disasters. Marcus told about the time he tried to make pancakes and forgot eggs. The result had been flat, sad circles that his dog wouldn't even eat. "I once tried to bake cookies for my mom's birthday," Jordan offered, crimping the edges of another dumpling with increasing confidence. "But I used salt instead of sugar. She took one bite and her face did this." The imitation of Mom's shocked expression made Marcus laugh so hard he nearly dropped his dumpling. Mrs. Chen watched them with twinkling eyes. "You know what I've noticed? Both of you are getting better with each dumpling. Look at this row compared to your first ones." She was right. The dumplings had evolved from sad lumps to something that actually resembled food. They weren't perfect. Some were too fat, others too thin, and a few had crimped edges that looked like abstract art. But they were definitely dumplings. "How come it's easier now?" Marcus asked, successfully sealing another wrapper. Because you kept trying, Mrs. Chen said, and because you weren't alone. Everything is less scary when we have friends learning alongside us. Jordan thought about the bicycle waiting outside, wheels probably still dripping with judgment. Marcus, do you know how to ride a bike? Marcus shook his head, flower in his dark hair, making him look like he'd aged 50 years. My dad's been trying to teach me, but I keep falling. Last week I crashed into a bush and got stuck. The neighbors had to help pull me out. I fell today, too, right into Mrs. Patterson's lawn. Her garden gnome saw the whole thing. They compared crash stories while folding more dumplings, each tale more dramatic than the last. By the time the dumpling pile had grown tall enough to feed a small army, both children had forgotten their earlier frustrations. These are ready to cook, Mrs. Chen announced. But first, I have something to show you both. She led them to her living room, where photos covered every surface. This one, she said, picking up a faded black and white picture, is me at your age. In the photo, a young girl stood next to a bicycle that looked very big compared to her tiny frame. Her knee had a bandage, and her expression mixed determination with fear. It took me 3 months to learn, Mrs. Chen said. 3 months of falling, crying, and getting back up. My older brother laughed at me every day. But you know what? Once I learned, I rode that bicycle everywhere. I delivered newspapers, raced my friends, and even won a competition at the summer festival. She set the photo down gently. The things that are hardest to learn often become the things we're most proud of, and the people who struggle alongside us become the friends we remember forever. Back in the kitchen, they watched the dumplings bob in boiling water like little boats on the stormy sea. When Mrs. Chen said them ready, everyone held their breath for the first taste. They're actually good, Marcus said happily, his surprise making everyone laugh. Jordan bit into one of the lumpy early attempts. It might have looked funny, but it tasted like victory. We made these. We really made these. After helping clean up and promising to have another dumpling-making session soon, it was time to head home. Marcus walked with them to the sidewalk, where the red bicycle waited patiently. Want to try again? Dad asked. You don't have to if you're not ready. Jordan looked at the bicycle, then at Marcus. Would you want to learn with me? We could take turns, and when one of us falls, the other one could help. Marcus's face lit up. Really? You wouldn't mind? Everyone else in my class already knows how, and they make fun of me for still using training wheels. I don't mind at all. Mrs. Chen was right. Everything's less scary with a friend. Dad jogged home to get Marcus's bike while the two new friends examined Jordan's bicycle like scientists studying a puzzle. I think the secret is not thinking too hard, Marcus suggested. When I was making dumplings, I did better when I stopped worrying about making them perfect. And maybe we should start on the grass, Jordan added. It's softer when we fall. When we fall? Marcus grinned. I like that you said when, not if. At least we're being realistic. They spent the rest of the afternoon taking turns. Jordan would wobble forward a few feet while Marcus ran alongside, offering encouragement and occasionally catching the bike before it tipped. Then they'd switch, with Marcus pedaling and Jordan cheering. Falls happened. Many falls. Marcus crashed into the same bush he'd mentioned earlier, though thankfully didn't get stuck this time. Jordan discovered that mailboxes were surprisingly solid when bumped with a bicycle tire. They collected grass stains like badges of honor and compared scraped knees like battle scars. But something magical happened between the crashes. The wobbles became less dramatic. The distances grew longer. And most importantly, the fear began to fade, replaced by determination and laughter. You almost made it to the stop sign, Marcus shouted as Jordan coasted to a slightly controlled stop. That's like 1,000,000 times better than this morning. Jordan beamed, adjusting the yellow helmet that had twisted sideways during the last attempt. Your turn. I bet you can make it even farther. Marcus climbed onto his bike, blue with dinosaur stickers he'd added himself, and took a deep breath. If I crash into Mrs. Patterson's gnome, you have to help me apologize to it. deal. But you won't crash. Just remember what we learned with the dumplings. Now don't think too hard." He pushed off, wobbling at first, then finding his balance. Jordan ran alongside, not to catch him, but to share in the moment. Marcus's eyes widened as he realized he was actually riding, really riding, not just falling in slow motion. "I'm doing it," he yelled. "Jordan, look, I'm actually doing it." "Keep going. You've got this." Marcus made it past the stop sign. Past Mrs. Patterson's house, the gnome remained unharmed, all the way to the corner before carefully stopping. He jumped off the bike and did a victory dance that looked like a mix between a chicken and a robot. Jordan ran to catch up, and they high-fived so enthusiastically it made their palms sting. "That was amazing. You look like you've been riding forever." "Now you try to beat my distance," Marcus challenged. "I bet you can make it even farther." With Marcus cheering from the sidewalk, Jordan climbed back onto the red bicycle. The handlebars didn't feel as forward anymore. The pedals seemed to know where feet should go. And most surprisingly, the fear that had lived in the pit of the stomach all morning had transformed into excitement. Push off. Pedal. Balance. Don't overthink. The bicycle rolled forward, streamers flying behind like celebration ribbons. Past the stop sign. Past Mrs. Patterson's, the gnome appeared to nod approvingly. Around the corner and back again. When the bike finally coasted to a stop in front of Marcus, both friends were grinning so wide their cheeks hurt. "We did it," Marcus breathed. "We actually learned to ride bikes." "Together," Jordan added. "We learned together." Dad appeared from the house, camera in hand. "I got some great pictures of both of you. Mrs. Chen is going to love seeing these." As if summoned by her name, Mrs. Chen emerged from her house carrying a plate. "I thought 2 new bicycle riders might need some celebration dumplings," she called. They sat on the porch steps, eating dumplings that tasted even better than the first batch. Mrs. Chen listened to their afternoon adventures, nodding knowingly at each triumphant setback. "You two learned something important today," she said. "Not just about bicycles or dumplings, but about friendship and courage. When we share our struggles, they become smaller. When we celebrate together, joy becomes bigger." Marcus's dad arrived as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus hugged Jordan goodbye, promising to come back next weekend for more bike riding and dumpling making. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for not laughing at me, for learning with me, for being my friend." "Thank you too," Jordan said quietly back, "for showing me I wasn't alone." As Marcus and his dad drove away, Jordan stood next to the red bicycle that no longer seemed like an enemy. Tomorrow there would be more practice, probably more falls, definitely more wobbles. But that was okay. Learning new things wasn't just about the skill itself. It was about the people who stood by you while you figured it out. Dad put his hand on Jordan's shoulder. "Proud of you, kiddo. Not just for learning to ride, but for helping Marcus, too. That took real kindness." "Mrs. Chen was right," Jordan said, running a hand along the bicycle's frame. "Everything really is less scary with friends." The last rays of sunlight caught the silver streamers, making them shine like shooting stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new skills to learn, new fears to face, but it would also bring friends to share them with, and that made all the difference. Inside Mrs. Chen's house, the light from her kitchen window glowed warm and inviting. Through the glass, her hands could be seen preparing another batch of dumpling dough, ready for next weekend's lesson. Some things, after all, were best learned slowly, with patience, laughter, and good friends by your side.